Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the EZFX signal broadcast for August 16th, 2016, Tuesday. My name is Bradley Freed, and for the next 20 minutes to half hour, you're going to be joining me as we review our watch list from yesterday and update the trades and pairs we were looking at while looking at the charts. And we also look for any new trading setups, new trading opportunities that we're either watching, what we want to watch, or we want to go ahead and get into. If you have any questions during the broadcast, if you're watching live, please use the chat room below this video window to ask your questions, and I will answer everyone's questions live at the end of the broadcast. If you're watching the recording and you have a question, you can either send me a private message via the community, and you can find that below the community menu on the top menu bar of this website, or you can go to the group called Trading Room and post a question, or you can even post your own trades or charts or anything you want to do. And you can talk to me and you can talk to other members as well. Or you can send me a good old-fashioned email at ezfxsignal@gmail.com. Either way, I'll do my best to get back to you, hopefully within 24 hours. I generally don't go longer than 2 days without answering communication to me, because I'm here to help you and I want you to be successful. Okay, so let's get started. I want to review our watch list from yesterday. It's getting kind of long. We did have a few trades that closed out yesterday, so I'll be able to take some of those off the board. And our watching trades, I want to make sure those make sense, but I think they do. We're watching the pound pairs again. Pound yen buy, euro pound sell, pound Aussie buy, pound dollar buy, and pound Swiss buy. And we're also watching the dollar peso buy. And I'll tell you why. I kind of talked about it in the analysis report I released yesterday, but I think it makes sense. Whenever I don't know what's going on in a market, whenever I'm not sure, is it going to keep trending? Is it going to go back? I tend to just pull back and wait for, especially when there's a strong trend, I draw a trend line above it and I wait for it to show me that it's going to do something different. And that gives me a starting point to start thinking about, okay, set up a counter trend trade. And if the counter trend fails, then I can set up a trend trade. But it's a good starting point. It's kind of a reset button. And so that's sort of where I'm at with these pairs. And I'll get into more detail and show you some examples on the charts later when we take a look. Our new and open trades list, let's go ahead and check that out. A pound Aussie buy was new yesterday. Euro yen buy was open, and that was a signal trade. Aussie dollar was either buy or sell, but we were looking at an open trade on that, I think in the sell direction. Swiss yen buy, open. Also the euro Aussie buy, Aussie Swiss buy, New Zealand yen buy, dollar yen buy, CAD yen buy, Aussie yen buy, and pound CAD buy. These were all open trades. And we had one trade that closed last week. That was the Aussie Newsy that closed for 90 pips. So let's go ahead and jump over to our charts. And we're going to go through all these pairs one by one and update our list. Starting with the watching trades. We'll start with the pound yen. And go ahead and get my pound yen chart, which I kind of left over here. Like most traders, I've learned a healthy respect for the pound yen. I have traded it profitably, but it's always a little bit difficult to trade just because it's volatile and the stops are big when it does set up a trade. So sometimes it's just not possible to take a trade on it. Currently, this pair is trending downward along with the rest of the pound pairs, but it's also being pushed down by the yen. So this trend is being pushed by two very fundamental changes that are going on in the marketplace that we're seeing today. If we look at it in the 4-hour chart, this is what we've got. We got Brexit drop here. It made lower lows down here, and then it recovered almost to this monthly pivot before the triangle moving average changed color and the trend shifted downwards, and now it's retesting the low made after Brexit here. And this is the case with a lot of these pound pairs, and some of the pound pairs have even gone below that low. But on the 4-hour chart, we see Class A divergence. We have it here too, so this is a Class A zone that's being retested. There's not much reaction to this Class A signal here, to this divergence. So I would say there's a good chance that this pair is going to push through and invalidate this zone and go lower. And what does it mean in the context of our currency pairs? If we go to like a weekly chart, here's 2012. Here's when the yen started to recover after the conservatives took over in Japan and started devaluing the currency. It got all the way up here to 193, 190, 197, I think even. And now it's back down to 129. So quite a rapid fall off here. This is the case in most of the yen pairs. This point where this triangular moving average changes color, or this peak here, that's really when the conservatives' economic strategy began to completely just come apart. And it's been falling apart ever since. So 2015, June was really when it all, the wheels started coming off. And now it's going lower. What does this mean? It means we could revisit the lows we had before the conservatives took power down here. 116. It could go all the way down there. But we'll see what happens. And that was a low that we got to after the financial crisis. And then after the Fukushima nuclear accident down here, it just went a little lower. But and then it recovered a bit, and now it's on its way back down. And I don't see it stopping. It just keeps going. The combination of the Brexit plus the yen falling apart and getting stronger is really driving this pair lower and lower. So let's go back to our 1 hour chart. Let's go back to today and what we're looking at. In the midst of all that, we have a Class A zone that was created and then is being retested. It was created after Brexit. It's being retested now. There's no reaction in the currency pair in terms of a breakout. I've drawn a trend line above price. That would have to be broken for me to start thinking about buying this, simply because this has to show me that it can break out of this range before I'm willing to take a risk on a trade. And right now what it's showing me, based on everything we've looked at, is that it's going lower, and it's probably going to break through and invalidate the zone and go even lower. So another thing to think about is that we may want to trade into this trend. We're going to trade into the trend. What I like to do, and if you bought the course and you've studied the lessons, you've already seen this. But I'll explain it here as well because it's important. I use the zone. I mark the top and the bottom of the zone. It's kind of a thick zone, so we may have to think about stop losses later. But if this breaks through this zone, that's like breaking support. If it closes below that, then I'm interested in selling this pair. And when I sell the pair, I'm going to put a stop above the zone. However, this zone is big. It's 249 pips. So I will look for places where there's been a wick or where there has been other indications that there was a boundary or a support level or resistance level created above which there would be a good place to set a stop. We're not there yet, but when we get there, we'll start thinking about that. And I just like to mark the zones when things are moving in that direction, and that may set up a nice entry into the current trend, which may go as low as 116, which would be significantly further down. It's over 1,000 pips further down. All right, so that was my long-winded explanation of the pound yen. Let's move on to the euro pound. Euro pound was when we were in it. We took profit on part of it, and then the rest stopped out at break even. This trade is continuing to trend, just like the pound yen. It's made higher highs as recently as a few hours ago. It dropped, and it looks like it's still moving that way. I was able to draw a really nice trend line under price here, and I still like this trend line. Unless this trend line is broken, I have a triangular moving average color change, and I see a Class A supply zone appear. I'm not interested in planning the trade, but I'm currently watching it. And I will be ready when it happens, as long as the risk to reward ratio is good, to get into a trade in a sell direction on this pair. So we're watching this still, just like the pound yen. Pound Aussie, same thing. And remember, when things go too far, that's a signal to me that there's an opportunity that's forming. So I love things that have gone too far, and those are the things that I focus on. And sometimes it takes a few weeks for them to actually set up, but they do produce the big trades that we cycle through our system and that we take profit on. Pound Aussie, this is actually leveled out a little more. It's kind of interesting. We had a pretty steep even trend going down, and then it sort of rebounded up and then made lower lows. It's still making lower lows. It's still trending, but the angle of this trend has lessened. So if I was to get, for example, a Class A demand zone appear, and I was able to get a triangular moving average color change and a close above this trend line, I would be interested in buying this pair. And above, this is where we stopped out before, by the way. That's what this red line is. Above, we have lots of nice pivots. We also have Fibonacci levels I'm sure we could use. But depending on where we get into this trade, we have a weekly pivot here. We have one here. We have the August monthly pivot here. And so there's lots of even just pivot targets we could select. If we're thinking about fibs, we also have a lot to work with. The recent high made here to the recent low. We can draw a Fibonacci extension. I'll have to clean up this bottom here just a second. Okay. And so when we take the trade, we see that the 50% level is just about at this weekly pivot, and the monthly pivot is above the 61.8. So those aren't bad places to go ahead and set targets when we do take the trade. But we're not there yet. We need our entry signal. We need our entry confirmation before I'm going to get into this, especially because we were stopped out before. I'm going to be especially strict about the number and quality of confirmation that we receive in terms of technical indicators interacting with each other, giving us an entry signal. Next, let's look at the pound dollar. Now, the pound dollar is really responding well. I mean, we had a weakening in the dollar overnight, and this is reflected in the pound recovering a little bit against the dollar. So the pound is terrible, but the dollar was kind of not having a good day yesterday. So it broke out of this trend line, and it's a Class A zone. We do not have a triangular moving average. This, with these lines repainting, this bubble, this may become a buy bubble. And this may, in fact, set up a buy signal for us. I'm not quite there yet. I need to see that final confirmation. I think the other thing that's compelling is that these other pound pairs continue to make lower lows. But we're going to get to a moment where all of these pairs, or most of them, are going to start moving in the buy direction. And one of them is going to be first, and that first one might be the pound dollar. So let's just keep an eye on it and see if it actually produces a signal. If I did get into a trade on this, the first profit target would be the monthly pivot here. And then after that, let me just redraw my fibs on this trend because it's moved quite a bit lower since we stopped out of the first trade. The next profit target would be the 78.6% fib retracement level. So pretty aggressive targets, but it's got a lot of I think bound up energy, especially after Brexit, and it's been bouncing around sideways. It's made lower lows, but it hasn't retested the low here yet, which is unusual among the pairs. The other pairs have. So it could turn around and at least make a run up to this monthly pivot, giving us a nice, healthy profit. The distance, just check the distance because it can be deceptive unless you measure it. To that is 187. And to the 78.6% retracement level is 276, which means there's a potentially huge stop required right here. That would be, well, it's still below 150, so it's 128. As long as we're below 150 when everything lines up, we can go ahead and take that trade, even at a small trade size. And we can manage it and try to get to that target. So that I'm liking a lot. I'm even going to put it as a new trade because we're almost there. We just need a couple more points of confirmation before we go ahead and take the trade. Don't be afraid of pairs just because you've recently stopped out or because you think there's a massive trend. If it's giving you a positive signal and everything is there and you're being really strict with the entry, what's required, then there's no reason not to trade it, because if you don't, you're probably going to miss out on an opportunity. If not now, then at a later date. You've got to get your mind set to sets up, it gives me the signal, and I take the trade. If you're not sure, just give it a little more time. If it seems to be moving against you, or if it's gonna come out of alignment, and the wheels are gonna come off, you can give it a little more time, but don't be afraid of taking a trade on something. All right, pound Swiss. And this is dropping. This is another one that's making lower lows. It's going to retest this low here it made a few hours ago. I did draw a nice trend line over this. So when this trend line is broken, that's going to tell me that something new is happening. I want to see a Class A demand zone, triangular moving average color change, hopefully a buy bubble, which is actually forming here. Let me put a blue circle on that. We do have a buy bubble forming here. It's not really reacting to that, though. This is a really strong fundamental trend. And of course, trend line break. If we get all those things, I could definitely buy this pair. And there's weekly and monthly pivots I could use as targets with good risk to reward ratios, hopefully, when the trade actually sets up. And finally, let's look at the dollar peso. This is another one I like because it's moved so far, so fast in such a clear direction. And it's gone further than we ever anticipated it would, even when we were taking sell trades on this. You know, we'd hit our targets here, and then it kept going significantly longer, which means this shows you how trend following can be a very profitable thing to do. If we didn't set a hard target here, and we just let it go until the triangular moving average moved color until we got an opposite Class A signal, we would have added an additional 674 pips to this trade. Now, we still don't have an exit signal yet, so this is a prime pair to trend follow. It works really, really well when you do that often. Below, we have this small demand zone here. This may be a place where it'll set up, but again, I need to see a complete reversal signal with 3 or 4 points of confirmation before I'm ready to buy it. But I'm definitely enjoying watching this because it's going to give us a nice big buy trade in the future. All right, let's move on to our new and open list. Pound newsy buy was new as well. So let's see what that's been doing. All right, so remember, this was giving us a complete signal yesterday. When we looked at this together yesterday at the same time, we had a buy bubble. We had a breakout of this trend line, which is, again, pretty clear. We have a Class A zone down here. And then we had the triangular moving average changing color. And I said at the time that I really wasn't ready to trade this because it was moving lower, and it looked like it was going to, we didn't have another candle closing in the buy direction. Now, I didn't want to go so high that I didn't have a good risk to reward, or my stop loss would be huge. But remember, I said I might set a stop here. Well, that would have been stopped out. So I'm glad I didn't take the trade. And in fact, it's still moving lower. So again, like the other pairs, as recently as a few hours ago, it made a lower low. Not as low as this one, but it seems to be heading in that direction, and it's not reacting much to this Class A here. We haven't had a big candle that broke out in the buy direction based on this signal. So I'm still a bit bearish on this. The pound dollar is looking the best for a trade setup if we get all our final confirmation. But the pound newsy, I do like it, but it's just not reacting. So this tells me that the fundamental trend is stronger than the technical indicator at this point. And I just want to wait and keep watching it. It's still a new trade. It just needs one more thing. If this triangular moving average changed color and we had a breakout candle in the buy direction, I would probably be interested in going ahead and setting up a buy trade on it. We have monthly and weekly pivots above that could be good targets, but not quite there yet. I will leave it as new just because it's, according to our rules, it's almost there, and I want to see if we can get all the way. Okay, euro yen buy. This was a casualty of the drop in the yen last night. It did stop out. We got in here. We got in a little bit late, but it gave us a signal. We had a trend line break. We had the triangular moving average was blue, and it did move higher for a while, and then we got this drop, and it almost stopped out here, and then it did stop out here, and it may go lower because the dollar yen is also going lower. So this is done, sadly, but it was controlled. We controlled it with our trade size. So we controlled the percentage of our equity we would lose in a worst case situation. We controlled it with a stop loss, and we definitely got out. We're not going to become religious about our trades and start praying for them to go back and sending money into our account to avoid a margin call. We're not going to go there because that's just hell. And I've been there. I think we've all been there, but it's not a place that anything good happens. So let me just take a look at where we are at. can't stand Excel. It's absolutely the most primitive program out there. All right, so this is my Japanese worksheet. Let me close this. Close this. Close this. Sorry, I apologize about this. I think this is it. Okay, so euro yen, we were risking 141, and we lost 141. And it was a stop out. I don't like stop outs, but what I hate more is I hate uncontrolled trades that don't have a stop, that are moving against me more than 1%. All right, so let's get back to our list. The next one, we were looking at an Aussie dollar buy or sell, and we had an open trade on that. And this is moving in the buy direction again. We did have a sell trade open. The triangular moving average has since changed color. That's an exit signal. So I would be out of that at this point. If it breaks through this zone in the buy direction, we'd still have that buy trade sitting there. And if it closes above and punches through it, we can take a buy trade, put the stop below the zone, and we'll be in a trend trade. This pair is on the start of a long-term buy trend after falling for months and months. The triangular moving average has changed color on these higher time frames like the weekly and the daily. It's currently blue. The weekly is the most clear. Now the monthly it hasn't changed yet, but the weekly is probably the most useful at this point. So I would be very interested, and I've tried at various times to trade this in the trend direction. It doesn't always work, but when it does and you catch the move, it can go on and you can take a few hundred pips out of this pair. And if not, you've controlled your downside because you're controlling your stop loss with trade sizing, et cetera, et cetera. So let's look at the. So right now, I definitely want to buy on this, and we're just going to call it new. If you were in a sell position, you should loss cut that at this point. It's just definitely it's giving you a triangular moving average color change, and you may take a small loss, but it's better to take a small loss than a big loss. I wouldn't ride it all the way to the stop, even though this is sell bubble forming on this. Let's look at the Swiss yen buy. Now, like I said, the yen pairs gave us a pretty good scare last night. Some of them stopped out. The Swiss yen also doesn't have a lot of energy. I think if you're in this, you can stay in this. You can see if it's going to reverse for you, but it's currently moving lower. It almost stopped out last night, and then it recovered, and it's kind of moving down again. You could loss cut this if you got in here, or you got in here at a discount. It looked like it was going to make a run. It may still make a run. So either hold on to it, follow your trade plan, and if it stops out, it stops out. What I don't want you to do is get into the habit of loss cutting because you get scared. If you do that, if you get emotional and you're always loss cutting, and then sometimes things are going to turn around, and that would have been your big profitable trade for the week. Doesn't always happen, but when you get into a trade, you make a decision about with your trade sizing and your stop loss about how much you're going to lose, and you should be prepared to take that loss as you try to get into the opportunity. This pair is still moving sideways. There's still potential for these pairs to recover a bit, especially to the monthly pivot this week. So I would my preference is, as I did with my own yen pairs that did stop out, I've held on to them, and we'll see what happens. And that's just me. Maybe you have a better technique for loss cutting. Maybe you have a better set of rules than I do, but that's what I do. And I found that over time, in aggregate, it works just fine. So the Swiss yen is still open. We did not send out a signal on that trade. Let's check out the Euro Aussie, so our buy trade. This is doing pretty well, but it's having trouble moving through this trend line. Oh, there it did. It popped right through. So this is moving right along towards the monthly pivot. We got into it down here on a break above these trend lines and put a stop below this class B demand zone down here. When it hits the monthly pivot, we'll move the stop to break even, and we will take partial profit on the trade. The final profit target is a 78.6% Fibonacci retracement level on this recent move here. Aussie Swiss, this is kind of the opposite side of the same coin. It's moving lower, making lower lows, getting closer and closer to the monthly pivot at 0.73862. It's moving as planned pretty much. It's one of our best trades this week. I didn't know if it would be, but that's because you don't know. I would have thought here, maybe it's reversing. Maybe the yen pairs are going to reverse, and there was kind of a correlation between those, and maybe it's time to take profit. But I said, no, let's leave it in and see what happens. And sure enough, it's making lower lows. So the trend is intact. It's moving towards our targets. That trade is in good shape. New Zealand yen. So another one of our yen trades. There it is. This pair moved higher. There was a lot of volatility on announcements last week. Then it moved lower. The triangular moving average changed color. It moved down, retested the zone, produced a Class A signal. It's been bouncing. This has been support. It hasn't stopped out like the other trades. The stop is right down here, by the way. And it's not at break even. We're still trying to get to our first profit target, which was the 50% retracement on this recent move here. I'm still in this. I still like it. I think there's other things driving this besides just the yen. And I'm not ecstatic about it, but there is a good chance that something's going to happen that's going to send it back up again. That it will bounce off the zone here and go higher. It could also stop out, but for the moment it's open, and we're going to see what happens. Dollar yen. This was another one that closed out, and this pair has taken a beating. It did. I think it's probably the key driver behind a lot of these things. It's gone below 100, folks. 100 is an emotional level for the pair. It's at 99.87 right now. I think it may be getting ready to revisit the Brexit low down here, which was 98.7, getting down to the 98s. This is really signifies a complete and utter failure of the economic policies of the conservatives in Japan. And this has a similar, if you go to the weekly chart, it's not quite as bad as some of the other pairs, like the pound yen. I mean, we were kind of getting close to revisiting lows. 2010, it was all the way down here at like 70 something. And then it turned around after 2011, after the conservatives started devaluing the currency. It went way up. It actually recovered fully to where it was in like 2007. And now it's dropping again. And it hasn't gone necessarily even halfway down in terms of retracing down, but it's got a long way to go. And it could go a lot lower. So hold on, it's going to be a bumpy ride, but there's going to be some good trades setting up along the way too. At any rate, we are out of this for now. And we had risked 122 pips on it. So we lost 122 pips. But remember, 122 pips is only 1% or less of our trading account. And that's why we control our risk. Okay. Next, let's look at the CAD yen. This pair, I believe, is still open. Yes, it is. And it hasn't been as heavily impacted for some reason as the other pairs. Our stop is way down here. We've been in this for a while. It's moved through several. It's been trending pretty strongly. The triangular moving average has recently changed color, and it made lower lows. So this trend may be falling off, but we're hitting such extremes, there's a potential for it to rebound fairly quickly. So I've got a lot of margin to my stop loss. I have a monthly pivot up here, which this pair is likely to hit. This pair already did not hit. Actually, take that back. It did hit the July pivot, and it hasn't hit the August pivot yet. But it's hit every monthly pivot for the last several months. I do think that it's a place that these pairs go sort of almost automatically, just to tick the box in some ways. And a lot of traders drive price to those levels before they close out their positions. So I'm still in that. And of all the yen pairs, that's probably looking the best. So we had an Aussie yen buy. Sorry, other trade. And the Aussie yen buy was the one that we already took partial profit on and had moved our stop to break even. So we didn't have any risk on the pair, and it came down, made a lower low, and it hit the break even stop. So we did take profit though. Move that stop to break even. We made 119 pips on this trade on the first part that we closed out at target 1. So that's what we're going to put on the board. It's a win for 119 pips, with the rest making 0. And we talked about the CAD yen. Let's look at the pound CAD. That was our other open trade. So this had closed. I don't know why I didn't take it off the board. I guess I didn't talk about it yesterday. This is closed, but we're looking for our next buy. We do have a Class A situation down here, but it's moving lower. It'll probably punch through this. We had a buy bubble here. It's just not responding, so I drew another trend line here. And sometimes in these situations, what happens is we get a Class A, it gets punched through, and then a new Class A forms right behind it, and then we do finally get a breakout and then a trade. There's a nice weekly pivot here, a nice monthly pivot here. I'd love to trade to those as targets, but I need to see the correct confirmation before I'm ready to get in the trade. And I can just move the CAD yen up to here. And I think on the CAD yen, let's see. I didn't have it on here. I don't think I personally traded this, but we'll just put it back in the, or not the CAD yen, I'm sorry, what am I doing? CAD yen is still open. Pound CAD. Yeah, the pound CAD will put as a buy trade in the watching list. So those are the updates. We did take some losses. We're kind of net pips were down so far this week, but we have some winners on the horizon that I'm pretty excited about that will bring us back into being profitable for the week. Tough week in a way. It's hard to take losses, but that happens. And the point is that we have a strategy to deal with it, to contain and manage our risk, and also to recover. And we do recover. And I've found over the last 2 years that I've been developing and trading various iterations of this system that recovery is one of the key good things about the way that we trade using this strategy. All right, well, I think I've taken enough of your time. I think we're over 30 minutes, so I want to go ahead and end the webinar. I'm just going to check real quick that we don't have any questions in the trading room. At present, we don't have anyone live attending, and we have no questions. So if you have questions, please, as I said earlier, send me a private message from the community. Just find me in members. My handle is EZFX. You can send me a private message. You can go to the groups. There's a trading room group, and you can join that group and then post questions, charts, other things there. It's right here. Or you can send me just a good old-fashioned email. And let me write down the address in the chat room again. Good old-fashioned email at EZFX signal at gmail.com. Okay, well, thanks very much for watching, and we'll be back tomorrow with another trading room. And if I have any additional new trades that set up, I will be sure to send you all trade signals. Talk to you later, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.